Good evening. Let me at the outset wish all of you a very, very happy new year. This is our first event of the new year, and I'm happy to see all of you turning up for this. Today we have a very special topic, historical ties between Tamil Nadu and the Netherlands. Many of us may know that the Dutch were here much before the British, and we have had historical ties with the Dutch. But very little is known except for Pulicat and some of the remains over there which remind us of their presence here. Many of you would have visited Tranquebar too and seen the fort over there. So we have with us an authority on this subject, and I have the privilege to introduce him. Professor Lennart Bess, I hope I'm pronouncing it properly, or I don't know, is a historian, an Indologist, and he researches political culture in South India at the Institute for the History of Leiden University. He teaches Asian history, Dutch overseas history, and colonial sources. He has published various books and articles about early modern South Indian kingdoms and Dutch sources on Asia. He is presently working on the courts and dynasties of Kerala. I have great pleasure in inviting Professor Lennart Bess. Joining him later will be Xavier Benedict. Please. I said joining him later. He is an architect and wetlands enthusiast dedicated to the promotion and conservation of the Pulicat Lagoon through his NGO AARDE Foundation. Since 2007, the foundation has empowered over 220 women through Palmyra Leaves Handicraft. He also manages a museum for Pulicat Lagoon awareness in Padavarkadu, Tamil Nadu. His work was showcased at World Expo South Korea, and he regularly publishes research papers. He holds an architecture degree from Anna University and an MBA from Lancaster University. His notable projects include the Kudankulam Nuclear Power Township and SRM University campus. He is a member of ICOMOS India and other prestigious organizations. Welcome, Mr. Xavier. Thank you. And without further ado, let me hand over the proceedings to Professor Lennart Bess.
Thank you very much. Hello everyone. It's really a very great honor for me to speak here. I know that people always say that, but for me, I'm standing here in Chennai in Tamil Nadu. It's an area I've been working on for 35 years. And I think this is the first presentation I actually give within Tamil Nadu. So it's really quite special for me. So I would like to thank the Chennai International Center for inviting me, especially Mr. Chandramouli. And now I'm doubting if I pronounce it in the right way. Also Mr. Sabari, with whom I've been in touch to arrange all this. Of course, I also want to thank my dear friend Vijay Kumar, whose idea actually this is. And also I'm very happy to present this today together with Xavier Benedict, who I've been knowing for a long time. I also hope I look kind of okay with all this machinery around me. This is the first time. Actually, I went to buy a new blouse at Fab India, correct? In Pondicherry, so I look nice, but I don't know if this matches the blouse. Anyway, what I will do is, I have about half an hour. I will try to tell you a little bit about the Dutch presence in Tamil Nadu, roughly between 1600 and 1825, because that was the period when Dutch were trading here. So I will say the Dutch, but actually I should say the Dutch East India Company, because like the English, it was a company that was trading here. And we usually refer to this Dutch East India Company with the abbreviation VOC. It is the abbreviation of the Dutch name. And you see the VOC logo actually 3 times here. And these 3 images sort of represent for me the different aspects of the presence of the VOC in India and also in Tamil Nadu. So here you see a coin. And there's also an N, which refers to Nagapattinam, because this coin was actually minted in Nagapattinam. It shows the commercial economic side, because of course, VOC, the presence of the Dutch here was all about money. That was the only reason why they first came here. But of course, um, if you want to go somewhere far away from your homeland and you want to do business, you have to have some kind of relationship with the local authorities, right? Um, you can either just try to be friendly and maybe sign a contract and get permission to conduct trade. You can also say, hey, we have these Portuguese guys here, we don't like them, let's chase them away and we take over their town. There is always some kind of political, diplomatic contact, and it can be violent. So this is a cannon with the A of Amsterdam. It represents the political, diplomatic, and sometimes military aspect. And then, of course, if you're trading somewhere and you have political connections, then there can be also a cultural exchange. So culture is the third aspect. So what you see here is a kalamkari. I think you all know that word. It's of course an Indian cloth, but it's very interesting because and I don't know the background, I think no one knows, but actually you see this man putting a coin in this vase, and it's not very clear, but you have to believe me, it has the VOC logo here. So this sort of goes back to this side because it's all related. So these three aspects I will be briefly talking about. Okay, let me quickly tell you something about the Dutch in India. As you can see on this map, there were four main areas where the Dutch were active. Surat, as the Dutch called it, but that's basically referring to Gujarat. Malabar, which is of course Kerala. Coromandel Coast, that's where we are. So the coast of Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, and then Bengal in the northeast. Four main areas where the Dutch were active. And then I also indicated Ceylon, modern day Sri Lanka, because this little area, the fishery coast, as far as the Dutch were concerned, was actually part of the administration of Ceylon. What I should say is that in none of these areas the Dutch controlled large territories. So it was small areas, sometimes a town, but usually only factories where the Dutch were staying. Okay, as you can see here, all the different factories where the Dutch were stationed are shown here, mostly on the coast, also some inland. For instance, Burhanpur, Golconda, Agra, Patna. These were some factories away from the coast, but mostly all the other trading factories were, of course, on the coast. Then the question is, why were the Dutch in India? Why did they come there? Originally, they were not that interested in India. I'm sorry to disappoint you. They were actually interested in spices, and the spices were actually available here in east of present-day Indonesia. Of course, the Dutch have to bring something to get these spices, but they had actually nothing that the people from eastern Indonesia were interested in. They were not interested in Dutch products, but they were interested in Indian textiles. So that's why they went to India, to get textiles. That was the main product that the Dutch got from India. They brought it to Indonesia. They got spices in return, which they brought back to Europe. But they also brought it to China, where they changed it for silk. The silk was brought to Japan. There they changed it for precious metals. And the precious metals were in high demand in India, where they could get textiles, which they would bring to Indonesia, and so on. So this was what we call the intra-Asian network, with which the Dutch earned incredible amounts of money. So India was actually part of a larger intra-Asian Dutch network. What is important to say that in India the Dutch mostly remained merchants, not really governors of territory. There was not really territorial control except in a few towns in the south which the Dutch conquered from the Portuguese. The only exception to some extent is Kerala, where the Dutch didn't really control territory either, but they were actually politically and economically dominant. Another exception is that Kerala was not a place for textiles, but for pepper. Okay, then let's zoom in. What were the Dutch doing in the Tamil area? Okay, also textiles, the main product that the Dutch got from Tamil Nadu. As you can see here, there were lots of factories. It's not so clear, but all the black balls, not the white balls, but the black balls, they refer to factories of the Dutch. So all the way from Pulicat, and Xavier will tell you much more about Pulicat, down to Nagapatnam, places like Sadras, Teganapatnam, Tirupapuliyar, Tirumulaivasal, all little towns. This is where the Dutch were conducting their trade. And then also the fishery coast, I already mentioned it, between Cape Comorin all the way to Kilakarai, there were several factories where the Dutch were active. And especially in this area, Tuticorin was an important place. Talking about the fishery coast, that had an extra significance because that's where you could get pearls. I think that is still going on as far as I know, and the Dutch wanted to control this pearl fishery. So here you have an image from a travel account by a Dutch guy, Johan Nieuwhof, and he also wrote about this activity. So for a long time, more than a century, the Dutch controlled this pearl fishery and actually also again made a lot of profit from it. So here, this is how someone in the Netherlands imagined what it looked like. I don't think it looked like this, because these images are always a problem. It presents a European perspective, but at least you have some idea. Okay, so because of all these activities, the Dutch, of course, needed permission from all these local rulers to set up these trading posts. So they had to conclude a lot of treaties with local powers. So in 1608, the first contract was concluded between the Dutch and the Nayakas of Jinji or Senji, and that allowed the Dutch to set up trading stations at Teganapatnam and Tirupapuliyar, two little places south of Pondicherry. Then in 1610, the Dutch concluded a treaty with the rulers of what remained of the Vijayanagara kingdom. So with the Aravidu dynasty, they concluded a treaty which allowed them to settle in Pulicat. And here you actually see a letter which is part of the Dutch East India Company archives, a letter written in 1610, so it's very early, and I don't know if you believe me, but this says Palekatte, which is the Dutch way to refer to Pulicat, and here you see Belur, which actually refers to Vellore, which is also in Tamil Nadu, which was at that time one of the capitals of the Vijayanagara Empire. Then 1658, the Dutch conquered Nagapattinam and Tuticorin from the Portuguese, so that brought them in close contact with the Nayakas of Tanjavur and Madurai, respectively. And then finally in 1659, the Dutch concluded a treaty with the Setupatis of Ramnat. And in 1690, the Dutch settled down in Kilakarai. And then sort of their whole system of factories and contacts with all the local rulers was in place and existed for more than a century. And this lasted more or less until the late 18th century, when the British became increasingly dominant and the Dutch became very unimportant. And finally, in 1825, the last few remaining factories that the Dutch still had were exchanged with the British. So the Dutch got some land in Indonesia that the British were controlling. And then it was all settled. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about the commercial side. So that first aspect that I have identified. So there were lots of treaties with these kings because they needed permission to do the trade, but there were also treaties with local merchants and craftsmen, because the kings gave them permission, but then they have to deal with traders and craftsmen to actually get all these commodities. So I don't know if it's clear for you to read, but this is another document from the VOC archives. It's a Dutch treaty with Indian painters from a place that the Dutch called Tirumalapatnam. And it's near Nagapattinam, and I think maybe it is now Tirumala Rajanpattinam. I'm not sure. But it's a treaty concluded at Nagapatnam in 1665. And it's interesting because it says, I don't know if you can read it at all, but it says, translation from the Malabar language is confusing. The Malabar language, it doesn't refer to Malayalam. It actually refers to Tamil. Between the Dutch and then all kinds of local painters. These were people who were dyeing the textiles. And what is really interesting, concluded 24 of April 1665. And what is interesting here that you have all the names of the dyers, which is quite exceptional. So you see lots of them are called Chetty. Yeah. But in this case, the only name we have is Ariappa. But I think it would be quite interesting to do some kind of research and see actually what does these names say. Can we say from which jati they came? So very interesting document, not only about the elite, but also about, just the local people. Okay. What is also important about this commercial aspect is that the Dutch claimed monopolies. So what they wanted to be the only traders that were allowed to trade certain products, or they wanted to be the only ones, for instance, to use the Pambang Channel, which is of course a very strategic place. And if you're the only one who is allowed to sail through the Pambang Channel, it gives you a lot of economic power. So these treaties were concluded, monopolies were established, and then the Dutch made a lot of profit. And they thought it was a pretty good, fair deal. So for instance, this stone, it's a memorial stone that comes from Amsterdam. It's now in the Amsterdam Museum, but it used to be just in the street of Amsterdam, Warmoestraat, for those who know Amsterdam. And what does it show? It says in Dutch, de Coromandelse katoenbalen, which means the Coromandel cotton bales. And here you see this Dutch trader, and he is shaking hands, or at least he is having a nice conversation with this Indian trader. So the image that they want to convey is it was all very peaceful and everyone was happy, including the Indian traders. Whether that's true, that's another story, but that's at least the image they wanted to show. And it was not really true, because there were always problems with these treaties. So the treaties were concluded, they were signed, and then the Dutch thought, okay, now we've arranged everything. And the Indian rulers thought, but there are also lots of other Europeans here. We can also conclude nice treaties with them. So we're not going to give the Dutch a monopoly, even though the Dutch think they will get it. And there are also traders from all other places in India and Sri Lanka and Southeast Asia and West Asia. And we also want to deal with them. So it was usually really hard to enforce the monopolies. So there was actually a lot of competition between the Dutch and other Asian traders, and also between the Dutch and lots of other Europeans, because there were also Portuguese, hello, and British, and Danish, and French, and they also, of course, all wanted to conduct trade. And that brings us to the political side of the VOC presence in Tamil Nadu. So basically you could say the Dutch were pretty successful, they made a lot of profit, but as said, it was hard to have a real monopoly. For that reason, a lot of diplomacy was necessary for the Dutch to sort of keep things going the way they wanted it to go. So why was this diplomacy necessary? To establish and maintain relations with the rulers and the royal courts, and also to protest against the treaties that were violated. So these agreements, contracts had to be renewed. New kings had to be congratulated, so to establish good relations. And of course, the Dutch had to complain about what they called smuggling. So then what did they do? They exchanged lots of embassies, temporary diplomatic missions. And they also exchanged lots of gifts. And they exchanged lots of letters with these rulers. So here you have an example. This is a letter that they received from Bhavani Shankara Setupati of Ramnath in 1725. And I'm showing you this because what I find interesting here is that they try to make sense of all the titles of the Setupati. But of course they have no idea what it means. It's very difficult, complicated Tamil. So they try to write it down in phonetic Dutch. So this is what they made of it. And this is what I think it means. So Hiranyagarbha Yaji. And Hiranyagarbha refers to a certain ritual, being reborn through a golden cow womb. Ravi Kula Shekaran Bhavani Shankara Rama Raja Setupati Katatevar. The Setupatis were not shy of using very long titles. So this gives you an idea of the very intense communication between the Dutch and these local rulers. Here you have another example. Two paintings in the Ramnath Palace in Ramnathapuram. Very beautiful, highly recommended. If you're nearby, make sure you see this palace. There are two paintings that show Europeans, and I'm pretty sure that these Europeans are supposed to be Dutchmen, because they were the only Europeans that maintained a very intense and long-lasting presence in the area from the 1720s. It's very beautiful. It's not only Dutch, it's also lots of Hindu deities and Indian kings. It's very, very beautiful place. But it also shows you that these relations with the Dutch were also important for those kings, that they actually chose to depict it on their palace walls. You also see important elements. There are gifts. There are other people at the court that might have some influence besides the king. You see there's a lot of protocol. So the Dutch are bowing, giving gifts. They are given chairs. So lots of things are going on here. Let me tell you a bit about the gifts. What kind of gifts did the Dutch give? Okay, lots of spices and cloths, which was sort of a bulk gift that made it look big. But the Indian rulers also wanted special gifts. So the Dutch also gave lots of weapons. For instance, pistols with 3 lopen. Help me. How do you... Barrels. Yeah, a pistol with 3. You can shoot 3 bullets at the same time. Or, for instance, jewelry. Or very exotic devices like binoculars. Or a self-playing organ that was given to the Nayaka of Madurai. He was really happy with that gift. And sometimes also exotic animals, like birds from Indonesia or things like that. These gifts are actually really interesting because the Dutch always made specific decisions about, okay, we go to this court, we have to give gifts to the king, but also to other people at the court that might be able to help us, right? So who are the most important people at this court that can help us? We have to give them more gifts. So here you see a document. I'm sure you can't read it, but you have to believe me. Dutch gifts to the king and courtiers in Maratha-ruled Tanjavur. Maybe you know that by the late 17th century, the Nayakas were defeated and the Maratha Bondsles took over. So this is the gift list of an embassy in 1741. And what does it tell you? This is what was given to the king. Pratapa Simha, if I'm not wrong, at that time. And then this are gifts given to another guy at the court that the Dutch thought, he's quite powerful. We have to keep him happy. And then you see lots of other people. And it tells you a little bit about the division of power, at least as the Dutch saw it. So what you can do, and this is what I did for my own research, is put all these lists together and make a top 7, top 5, and see what happens if you compare them. So what you see here is the distribution of gifts at Dutch embassies to the Nayakas of Madurai between 1668 and 1731 in order of value. So I managed to find 7 of these lists for Madurai. And you see, of course, that the king, and in one case a queen, Mangammal, I don't know if you're familiar with her, they always got the most, of course, because they're still kings. Regardless of how powerful they are, they need to get the most gifts. But look at the second row. It's quite interesting. You see that sometimes it's a Pradhani, and Pradhani is a prime minister. And sometimes it's a Dalavai, which is the military commander. And it changes all the time. And this took me a few months before I saw it. Because actually, what you read in most literature is that the king was most powerful, then the Pradhani was the second most powerful, and then the Dalavai was the third most powerful. And that never changed. That is sort of the established idea. This tells you a very different story, right? And if the Pradhani is most powerful, there's no Dalavai inside. And if the Dalavai is most powerful, there's no Pradhani. So to me, it actually seems that these are two very competing positions at the court. And it was not so harmonious and static as some people think. You also see lots of other people. So basically what you see is that the power relations keep on changing all the time. And then you might say, yeah, but this is only based on what the Dutch think. How well informed were they? Maybe it's all nonsense. Maybe they didn't understand it. That's a very good question. My reply is that whenever the Dutch showed up at the court with all their gifts, before they would actually be received by the king, a lower courtier, someone at the court not so powerful, would come to the Dutch and check the gifts. Okay, what did you bring for this guy, for this guy, for this guy? And usually he would say, okay, well done. These are the people you have to be nice to because they can help you with your new contract. Sometimes he would say, I don't think you gave enough gifts to this person. You better give a bit more. Oh, and you have actually reserved a lot of gifts for this person, but he has no power anymore. So you better don't give anything to him. So in a way, it's sort of a reflection with also some kind of local Tamil interference about the power relations at the court. Yeah, and what this also tells you is that these negotiations that the Dutch had with these courts were not only done with the king, but with all these other people at the court that were all influential. Another thing that is really important as part of the political relations and the protocol is all the ritual and the ceremonial at the court. And that was really important because there were all these rules, protocol rules, ritual rules. And if you follow the rules, it means that you want to have a good relationship. And it means that you agree with each other. If you don't follow the rules, if you break the rules, I think it means you're not happy with the other person. I don't think it means misunderstanding. I think these rules were often deliberately broken to show that you are not happy. And the Dutch could do that, and the Indians could do that. So one aspect of this protocol that you could follow or that you could break was the role of carpets. Carpets were really important. So here you see another image of a painting in the Ramnath Palace. You see the king, he is sitting on a carpet together with the crown prince. There's another important guy who is also sitting. And then you see this man and this man, they are standing. And they're not on the carpet. It's a local illustration of some people were honored more than other people. And that was expressed in, can you sit? Do you have to stand? Can you be on the carpet? Can you not be on the carpet? The Dutch had the same experience. So here you see a short passage from a diary, a report of a Dutch embassy to Ramnath in 1743. And the carpets play a very important role. So you see, for instance, the word al-katif, which is Arabic for carpet. And you see also the Dutch word kleed, which is the Dutch word for carpet. And what does this passage tell us? That in 1743, the Dutch were invited by the Setupati to come into the audience hall, and they appeared before the king. And then the king said, okay, you can sit down, but there was no carpet, which was an offense, of course, right? So the Dutch were like, where's our carpet? Are we supposed to stand? What are you doing to us? And then they said, well, there's another carpet with some people of the court sitting on it. We can roll it out a bit more and you can sit on it. But that's not very special honor, right? Then you just sit with the normal people. So what the Dutch did, they were actually prepared, because this was actually a problem every time they went to the court. There was always a problem with the carpets. So they had brought their own carpet deliberately. They put it on top of the carpet that was rolled out, and then they went to sit on it. And they said, hello. Yeah. So this was a way of it was a sort of a game, to show your expressions. So it was a very important part of the relationship. And there were lots of examples. So sometimes audiences were endlessly postponed. So the Dutch had to wait months and months before they could speak to the Nayaka or the Setupati. Or the Dutch would be housed in a very terrible building full of insects, where other people were already sleeping that had to be chased away. Or the Dutch would put in a nice building, but the nice building was next to the fortress wall, and a big gun was actually aimed at the Dutch lodging. So these were all signals to show whether the relationship was good or bad. Well, that might all be sort of still quite innocent. Sometimes, of course, there were real clashes and there was actual violence, because then the parties disagreed so much that diplomacy could not help anymore. So, for instance, the Dutch twice occupied Rameshwaram Island. I'm sure you all know Rameshwaram Island. It's a very holy, sacred place. The Dutch occupied it. It was very easy for them to conquer it militarily. But as soon as they had conquered it, all the rulers in South India started writing to the Dutch, like, hey, you beef-eating infidels, you really have to leave this island. It's a sacred place. There's this Ramanatha Swami temple, right? You can't stay. We understand you're angry with the Setupati. We don't like him either. But you have to leave the island. So there was all these letters coming in. And then the Dutch had to give in. So in that case, it was not really a success. Another example is in 1649, when the Dutch had a big conflict with the Nayakas of Madurai, and they attacked the Tiruchendur temple. I'm sure you're all familiar with that temple. But not only did they attack the temple and burned it down and really damaged it, they also took away the statues of the deities. That's pretty bad. And they took the statues with them to Sri Lanka. Now there are two versions of what happened next. The Dutch say that after some time they returned the statues to the temple. But the Indians have a different story, which is actually told in the temple itself by paintings. And I think the paintings are from the 20th century, but they probably reflect an older tradition, but I'm not sure. So what you see here, these are not all the paintings, but I think the most important ones. Here you see the big battle between the Dutch and Madurai. The Dutch win, and they take these statues, including Alexander, Shiva Nataraj, another one. And they were planning to bring these statues to Sri Lanka. But of course, the gods didn't like it themselves, right? So when they are halfway, India and Sri Lanka, there's a terrible storm, and the ships are almost gonna sink. And this was, of course, the revenge of the gods. So in their panic, they threw the statues overboard. And then this guy, a very important courtier, actually a Dalavai of Madurai, was visited by one of the deities in a dream, telling him, you have to go to this place, and there you can get the statues again. So there he went, and he put up the statues. So it was not the Dutch who returned the statues, but it was actually the gods themselves that took care of it. I think it's really interesting you have these two versions. So all in all, you can say that it was a relationship that was quite equal, you could say. None of the two parties really dominated. Also largely mutually beneficial, but okay, with occasional big clashes. Okay, let me very briefly tell you something about the third aspect, the cultural side, because there were lots of influences and interests mutually. One thing is, for instance, dress. So here you see two examples of Coromandel textiles, chintz I think you call them, and they were produced in large numbers for the Dutch market. And this really influenced fashion in 17th and 18th century Netherlands. And it's quite interesting that we have now some villages, little towns in the Netherlands, where people are still being dressed in these kind of clothes, and it's considered Dutch national dress. But actually it's just Indian dress, but no one knows. Another aspect is military influence. So all these Indian rulers were very interested in Dutch or other European military equipment, knowledge, and skills. So this is another mural from the Ramnath Palace. Again, this is a wonderful place that you should all visit. And you see a Dutch soldier, most probably a Dutch soldier, who is manning a cannon. So sometimes the Setupatis, but also the Nayakas, would actually hire Dutch military men who had certain skills that they were really interested in. Another example of mutual influence is art. So, I don't know if you know this one, Alexander. Yeah, okay, good. So, of course, Dutch people also enjoyed things that they saw in India. So this is a Dutchman, Mr. Reimer, who made a drawing of the Nataraj temple in Chidambaram, and it's now in our National Museum. And I think it looks pretty accurate. Actually, my wife and me, we were at this temple like 2 or 3 days ago. Yeah, I think it's, of course, this all changed, but this is still quite the same. And this is another drawing. We're not sure, but probably also close to Chidambaram. And you see a number of Indian musicians and dancers approaching a cemetery that is probably close to the temple. Finally, there was also a lot of linguistic interest. So, of course, that had a purpose. The Dutch also tried to convert people, especially in the Tamil-speaking part of Sri Lanka. So there's this Dutch pastor, Philippus Baldeus, who wrote some kind of grammar, you could say, of the Tamil language, right? So he's explaining here how the script works. And that was in 1672. And here there's a translation of Our Father, I think you call it, this Christian prayer. Yeah, so just some examples. Then the last thing I want to tell you is that, of course, there are also lots of documents that document actually this history, and that's important to pay some attention to. So in total, in the world, there's 5 kilometers of Dutch East India Company archives. And if you put them like in a library, you put them in a row, 5 kilometers. And hundreds of meters of these 5 kilometers deal with India and with Tamil Nadu. And most of it has never been read. Most of these books were closed 300 years ago. And yeah, I try to read as much as possible, but yeah, I cannot read everything on my own. To give you an idea, this is what it looks like. The small part of the documents that are kept in the Netherlands, in the National Archives. And to give you an idea, sorry I don't have a picture from Tamil Nadu, but in this case, Kerala, I hope you forgive me. But this is what arrived in the Netherlands in just 1 year with documents from Kerala, right? 2 very thick volumes, they're this thick, so altogether it's like this, all with information. And the same for Coromandel or Bengal or Surat, and then for almost 200 years. So can you imagine how much information that is? To give you 2 last examples, Dutch records on Tamil Nadu, politics, Tanjavur's courtiers and Ramnath's court protocol. So here you see a letter from Nagapatnam to Batavia, 1713, and it is saying that the Tanjavur king, Sarbogi Ragi, so that is Sarabogi or Servoji Raja, one of the Maratha rulers, they're saying, oh, he is living very carelessly, and he doesn't care about anything, and actually all the other people at the court are actually managing the kingdom, and they do what they want, right? So they portray him as a very weak king. Whether it's true or not, that is another discussion. And this is an example, another diary of an embassy to Ramnat in 1736, and it tells you a little bit about the court protocol and the influence of Islam, not Islam religion, but Islamic culture. So what they're saying is that they appeared for the young king, who was dressed in an Islamic way. Because of course the Mughals were very influential in this time. And then they say he was wearing lots of jewels. And then the Dutch ambassador is saying, I was greeting the king in a Dutch way. And then they say, he greeted me back in an Islamic way. Yeah, I think it's really interesting how this influence was so strong. Okay, but of course, if you do research in these materials, of course you have to combine it with Indian sources. So this is a final picture I want to show to you. You have an inscription of a Nayaka of Madurai, Vijayaranga Chokkanatha, and this is an Indian source in Telugu from 1710. And how amazing that we also have a Dutch source on him from 1708, almost the same year. So what is really important is that we combine these materials. That gives us a much more nuanced view. So yeah, in the 17th and 18th century, the Dutch made a lot of profit from trading in Tamil Nadu. But I think these unique sources and the information in those, that is the profit that we have right now in the 21st century. Thank you very much.
Okay, good evening. My name is Xavier Benedict. I'm an architect. I'm popularly known as a Pulicat man. In few people, if you know me, then I'm a Pulicat man. Today, I want to make it a little bit interesting because I'm not an academician, not as an, purely I'm going to talk about a nature-culture linkage, okay? How this region called Tamilnadu, not Tamil Nadu, Tamilnadu, which encloses the entire South India, was popular. How it was controlling the entire world also in those 500,000 years or 2,000 years, that cannot be done. And all this research been done since 2007, for which I've been traveling for more than 24 countries, all full sponsored also by the universities, leading universities. Recently by the Netherlands also to Indonesia to talk about cotton root. And Tamil Nadu government has accepted it as one of the nominations for World Heritage. Not now, in 2013 when Dr. Jayalalitha was alive. And that's a part of things. Here I'm going to talk about cotton root with the Dutch influence a little bit. And the question mark is about you to identify what is this color brown came from. Because I'm going to talk about nature-culture linkage. Let us talk about, instead of talking about his story, history is nothing but his story or her story. Sometimes influenced, some only by the rich people, rich kings, not by the poor person. So let us link the nature. So if you understand the history through nature, you will get a different perspective. You will throw away all your history books. To be honest, yes, this is, okay, so you have to identify the color, okay? This is what I do since 2007. I actively work on something called Pulicat, Save Pulicat to Save Chennai. Save Pulicat is the second largest water body in India, measuring more than 759 square kilometer, which is nothing but to double the size of Chennai Corporation City. That size is huge. It's just on the north of Chennai. Many people may not even know that. Plus, just Google it, you'll find it. So this is what I do. I have 2 offices in Pulicat with more than 290 women working on Pulicat palm leaf handicraft, which has been geotagged to now, and soon we'll be getting it on newspapers about the news. The popularity of Pulicat. Yes, this is what the Dutch did. They popularized around the world. And this is me popularizing in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. At the university, National University, I was talking. I was wearing a lungi, saram, in Tamil, and in Thai, in Singapore or in Malaysia, it's called sarang. Saram in the Thoothukudila solra vaarthai. And the saram, I bought it from a Cambodia village on the border, in the border of Cambodia. It's Andovan. Okay. And more popular is from Japan. I don't know what is the name. It's called as Hikono, Ikomo, something. This is still called as Palayakat. Kimano, okay. Pulikat is pronounced in a different way. Palayakat, Pallikattu. Pallikattu Sabarimalaki Sami Ayyappa. Yes, the word Pallikat is from Pulikat. So because of the popularity of the turban you wear. So lungi means something which you wear below the waist. Pallikat or saram, which is, okay, lungi means turban you wear in Pushtan language. Saram is which you wear below your waist. Okay. Pallikattu Sabarimalaki, the cloth you wear on your head is a very, what to say, a proud thing or a God's thing. So that's why it's called Pallikattu, Palayakattu. The popular song also is there. Okay, so this is what Pulikat, and Pulikat is famous for this kalamkari, which is drawn with a block printout or hand also. And it's still called in Palayakat in Nigeria and still called as Palayakat in Mexico. When I presented my paper in Santa Fe in USA, I went and showed that cloth, and one of the Mexican guys said, "Hey, this is my thing," and all. I said, "Okay, this is from the place I am from." Okay, this is, lots of books are there. The most popular book is Oceanscape. Please read it. This is very important to know what is the power of Tamil Nadu, Tamilagam before 16th century. And this is written by a very famous person called J. Silla Stephen. He translated all the Lisbon documents, which is lying in the Lisbon Museum, Lisbon Archives. So it gave us lots of information, published in 2015, adopted by the Prime Minister of India as a very important book, and it is kept in all the embassies of around the world, of Indian embassies around the world. Okay. This question you have to ask. Why all the way from Europe, the Europeans came? Is it for spice? It's for cotton, not for the cloth. I will mix English and Tamil also, please. If it is just for the cotton, just for the spice, in that time, they would have been eating biryani. Even today, they're not eating biryani, yes? I apologize. Okay, the Europeans should have been eating biryani. Vasco da Gama would have been eating morning, evening, afternoon biryani. Then why the hell they came here? Yes, they came only for cotton. I speak about this because I come from a family who were once upon a time boat builders. This is my grandfather's ship, Tony. This is the we do. I'm from Tuticorin. Again, I'm saying this. We belong to the community which makes the ship. And we belong to a community which makes this. These guys have been suppressed historically. Paimaram, yes, Paimara couple. Tony, Toikana Paimara, Pandravanga, or particular community who has been suppressed throughout the life, throughout the centuries. For reason is, today we have a petroleum and diesel. In those days, it was the only thing which makes you superpower. You understand now? Today we have aeroplane, we have all these things. Just about 150 years back, the only thing make you superpower, super global, or globalize the entire world, you need only one material. This thing. Yes? Now you understood the history. Yes. So this particular cotton was growing only here. There are famous cottons like Kutch cotton, Dhaka cotton and all. Namma ooru kai and the thick, hard skin cotton was here only. It's called Karimanal cotton. Okay, so I'll be showing that slide also. This is a painting, I took it from Smithsonian University, Smithsonian Archive, and this is the 1640 picture showing that sail of a Dutch ship, and this is the reason our ships were very strong. We don't use nails. My forefathers didn't use nails. They tie the boats by the ship wood and all. They tie it. So when it anchors on a lagoon or a hard rock, it doesn't break. If it is done by the nails, it will break. But if it is tied, the friction is taken easily by the ship. Understood? Yes. Okay. This is before the British, before the Dutch, before the things. Why they came? There are lots of stories about these guys from this region going all the way, doing all the business. We call it Chola, we call it Pandya, we call it Cheras, whoever it is. Yes? So this is a large trading route. And it is getting proved now by Keeladi excavation. So these guys in the Europe were wondering what made them, making them to travel across the ocean just like that. Across the ocean just like that. Yes? This is what? This is the slide I presented in Surabaya University. Before the arrival of the Portuguese and the Dutch, they were just catching the coast to come to the place, because they were using a little bit inferior cloth or linen as a sail. Able to understand what I'm trying to say? So in the sea, if you're using a linen cloth, it can't withstand more than 1 month. This is what told by my grandfather. If you do with it with the Indian cotton, particularly Tamilnadu cotton or Coromandel cotton, it can stand for 8 months. That's the difference the Cholas were playing, because they don't catch the coast, they just crosses the ocean with their one sail. Do you understand what is it that? That makes a large difference in the loading of the ship. If you want to catch the coast, every time they have to anchor somewhere, they have to change the cloth, they have to do all sort of things, purchase and everything. That's why we find lots of settlements all across the Africa. Yes, and there are stories exaggerating saying that my topic saying that it's wrong, they went to Africa also for certain things. No, I would say this is also one thing, because that time petroleum like kind of thing was the sail, which was coming from this coast. And it has been proved by the 1st century documents also. So this is a very, very important. That's changed the world scenario also by globalization. Later by the transatlantic, we call it a slave trade. There are one document, we got it from the Dutch document, saying that 1/3 or 2/3 of the Batavia city's population were Indians or slaves in the 17th century. Do you believe or not? There's so much of slaves were taken. Slaves were taken only for the agriculture, because the cotton, they know the knowledge of growing cotton. Yes? So this slide, I showed it in Surabaya University in last year. And to prove that, I went to a place called Borobudur, an 8th century sculpture on the northern side of the Borobudur temple. And the temple, this stone is called as Bharat. In Indonesian language, Bharat means west, the people who come from west. And there is a community called Baradar community, still lives in Aceh. Aceh, yes. I met a couple of the people of that community. Okay, so Baradar were the shipbuilders. And they were suppressed throughout the history by Cholas also. So this ship, 3-sail concept, that belonged only to, is it working? Only to this region called Tamilnadu. 3-sail concept of sailing the ship. This is 8th century. It's more older than our Mahabalipuram. Yes, the largest Buddhist temple in the world. Please go there. You will be surprised to see lots of influence of Tamil people over there. Tamil language also in their language. I got a lot of proofs, stone proofs in China as well as. This is after the Arabs came to this. Arab, not the Islam people, Arabs, the people of the Egyptian side. Egyptian cotton also famous. Wherever there is a delta, there will be large quantity of cotton growing there. But the quality varies. Depends on what kind of weather is there. So this is the sail. That made the change. So cotton, the word, because of the Arabic influence, it came from Arabic language. And that's a picture of the 100 years back picture. And particularly, the spices were exchanged for cotton. That's why oru sorun solluvanga. Biryani is another word for biryani in the Sangam literature called oru soru. Oru means putting everything together, eating together on one plate, which is Arabic culture is following now. It's all started from here. We call it as biryani now. But it's called oru soru. If you have been from Magalingapuram main road, there was a oru soru shop before COVID. Now it has been shut down. Okay, just to make you all realize how important cotton was, this is what the Europeans were thinking cotton was like. They know about sheep, so they thought cotton was growing like that. Understood? This is what Vasco da Gama was thinking. Exaggerated story. I don't believe in Vasco da Gama's story, but exaggerated, but this is what they were doing. They're thinking that the cotton, something these guys are doing, they have, even, always you have to see how the history through nature, you will see wonders. If you see history through the king's eyes, you'll see different things. That influence is evidence in your Keelakari Mosque. You believe or not, the Keelakari project manager of the Keelakari Mosque, and if it may be controversial, and the project manager for the Rameshwaram temple belongs to the same family, Sidakadi family. Okay, so don't think that it is an Ayodhya problem. The mosque was built like a temple. This is a 10th century mosque. Okay, it is not a conversion or anything. Same project manager. Because that influence came from Thailand. That's a big lecture I can give later. Okay, so this influence, this is what made Europeans to come here. This is what the Dutch made to come here. This is what the Portuguese made to come here. They want this petroleum to trade. Later it be globalized, conquered, colonialization came in. Understood? Yes. The Egyptians were using a different kinds of sails. This is the linen cloth sail, which can't cross the entire ocean by one journey, and this has made a difference. Huge, huge, huge. Not a single. I surprised by Stephen Jaisala's document. The entire thing was changed our entire understanding of the sea. Okay, this is very important to see how these things are playing a games here. According to 1502, the Portuguese came, because 1498, the arrival of the Vasco da Gama, followed by that, 1502 in Pulicat. This says about the Dutch. Can you see something different between this side and this side? Can you see a little bit of difference? This is little bit there, but not as a major cities today, even today. But this is major ports. Yes? This is where the culture-nature linkage is there. Please have a look thoroughly now. See the difference with the nature. This picture came from Bombay Natural History Society. I belong to that. I'm a life member of that. Can you see? All the nationally important coastal lagoons, where the turtle breeds, birds arrives from Central Asian Flyway, and all the forts, ports, colonial cities are located. Yes? So, protecting, this is what I do. I am protecting the lagoon with the history and saying how the colonialization came also, how the cotton also came in. This is a very important, and the navigation tool is this. Those days they didn't have any compass like a big, now you're seeing it as Alibaba or in a Aladdin movie. They were using this as a direction for the turtle, also for a direction. My grandfather used to tell stories about the turtles. So this is very, very important, nationally important coastal lagoons. The largest one is Chilika, second largest one this, Pulicat, third is this. This is where once upon a time linked with a channel called Buckingham Canal. Okay, now you have to understand what was the biggest thing which made us to cross the ocean. It was all because of the one word called monsoon. Okay, this is a typical 2015 Gaja Puyala, no, 2015 Varda, showing the movement of northeast monsoon. 25 states in India depend on southwest monsoon. The only state and part of Tamil Nadu, part of Andhra Pradesh, Rayalaseema, belongs to one monsoon called northeast monsoon. We are very different from the country because we belong to a different climatic zone, even in soil type, even in vegetation. Northeast monsoon, we are the only state to depend on northeast monsoon, and that particular wind is, we call it as export wind. Because during that northeast monsoon, all the ships sail from this coast to other countries. During the southwest monsoon, all the ships comes from other countries to Malabar coast. These are proved by documents. I'm not exaggerating it here. So, weather is very important, climate is very important here. Yes, the wind direction. It's called export wind, import wind. Take it as this way. Southwest monsoon is import wind, which comes towards us. Northeast monsoon is export wind. So spice, cotton. Spice, cotton. Understood? Cotton were going out of the country. Yes. So first modern administration was established in Madras by the British. Before that, the Dutch established it in Pulicat, Fort Gilrea. This is a very important thing which we are rightly lacking here to understand. This is called as Coromandel Coast. No, nothing called that. It is called Karimanal Medu, which was not able to, they are not able to pronounce it properly. So if you go across this region, you'll see many Karimanal Gramam villages. So Karimanal Medu became Coromandel. It's nothing got to do with Cholamandalam, please, or Chola, or nothing like that. Okay, these have been proved by lots of documents. I can show you documents if you need it. Okay, so if you go across this region, you will see a lot of Karimanal villages, even in Santom nearby. Okay, so this is, and later, you believe or not, I was surprised, by 1925, the entire cotton seeds of that Coromandel coast have vanished and replaced by American cotton. 1925. We can have a lecture about it later. Why 1925? Replaced completely by document. By even Coimbatore Agricultural University will tell that. Okay. You have to be very proud about Tamilagam. We were the reasons, one of the reasons, not Tamilagam only, Indonesia also, the reason for establishing stock exchange. Okay, 1602. These are the guys who sat down, wrote a lot of papers, share back things, and this is the first share, maybe first share or second share, and they were trying to have a lot of establishment to come to Tamil Nadu and Indonesia, because they need spice for the exchange, because we are very tasty mouth, we eat a lot of biryani, we eat biryani for the cotton, so exchanges. So the stock exchange was started for that. Same time they went to America, they established Brooklyn and New Amsterdam. If you see, link that history with the slavery, you will see big things like the brand called Levi jeans and Lee jeans. You'll be really sad now. These are all because of our slavery. People who went as a slave to another country like Suriname to grow cotton. Levi jeans has got a big link with the Pulicat also. This we published it in 2010 with the funding from Embassy of Netherlands with Anna University. We published this book called Pulicat and Sadras, and this is March 20th. They signed a treaty in 1602 to establish the stock exchange. Just to say, I'm not exaggerating here. It's thoroughly researched, and we are speaking here. This is the largest region. 23% of the world GDP. It's not nothing big. Today we have petroleum in Gulf countries. In those days, petroleum was cotton, nothing else. We did the estimation, we got it proved by some people also. So the GDP in 1750 was 23% of the world, because entire cotton slaves were sold from here only. Dhaka cotton was very flimsy and thin, so they can have a nice Mughals dresses and all. Kutch cotton was just exaggerated their story. Pulicat, yes, even before Chennai was bigger. Even not bigger, even when Chennai was established, even Delhi was there, even before Mumbai was established. Pulicat was like this. This is, I don't know how to pronounce his name, he's a Dutch person, he's a very famous, how do you pronounce it? Wingbongs. Okay, this was Pulicat. Today it's nothing but a few streets. Can you imagine such a huge city lying on the north of Chennai, beyond Manali town? Every kind of streets, Armenian street, Dutch street, Portuguese streets, Spanish street were there once upon a time. Today we have only Dutch street there. Big. This is the Fort Gilrea, the first Dutch fort in this coast or even in India, built on the Portuguese fort. Wherever Portuguese went, the Dutch went. That's why I got the name called Xavier Benedict Fernando. 1532 we got converted because we were sailors. We were being suppressed by some people, and they got converted to Christianity just for the sake of Portuguese to have good sails and boats. This is maybe an exaggerated story, but the record didn't say about this. They only say about our forefathers, how they converted it. 1532. Okay, so this is the Pulicat. So imagine the scale of Pulicat at that time, because wherever there was a big port, there were big fort as well as a lagoon, coastal lagoon. Wherever there is a coastal lagoon, there were river meeting. When a river meets a lagoon, what happens? The river acts like a national highway. Can you understand? Those days there was no national highway. So the national highways only was a river. So who were doing this, the boat riders, everybody was suppressed just because they were very important. They were very, very important, because without them the transportation can't be done. Without them the export import can't be done. Yes? Still today we have this lake, but unfortunately this has been damaged by the British. Wherever the British were, they made sure that it is all the Dutch history should be removed, because they don't want the Dutch history to be there to be told by the others later. So reconstructed it, and we did excavation with the ASI, Archaeological Survey of India, in 2015, and got the evidence of the, we showed it to the ambassador at that time, Alexander, ambassador. And this is a painting of 17th century of Pulicat, with the guys who are against the Dutch were hanged. And this is the reconstructed by the Anna University students of the Dutch fort called Fort Gilria. Now we want to reconstruct it, but let us see how things goes on. And if you come to Pulicat, we can see, this is, I claim, because I've been to many cemetery, this is the largest collection of very good numbers of Dutch cemetery, a Dutch tombstone. Okay. So very big, large collection is there in Pulicat. Please visit. We have a museum also. This is Pulicat. That's a very nice entrance to the Pulicat cemetery, which is next to our office. And what is the influence? Other influences the Dutch were made on us, because we were giving cotton. They were to give something to us, no? They didn't give us, but it's all the cultural influence. So we gave them a word called kaas. In Dutch, what is the name? Cash? Cash. Kaas. Kaas word is from Tamil. Okay. So we gave the word called kaas to the world. And they gave us something called Dutch doors. If you're an architect or if you're born in Tuticorin, you would have seen this kind of doors, double doors. I was born in that kind of house. And that we have something called Dutch roof tiles. Till today, the architects use the word called Dutch roof tiles, because it is influenced by the Japanese and the Chinese, not by the Dutch. Another important word, kakkus, which is a Dutch word, outhouse. They gave us some kind of discipline to go toilet. I may say, right, please excuse me. And they gave something called, we call it as chutney now, it's sambal. Still at home I call it sambal only, I don't call chutney. Many people say, no, Tamilagam means chutney only. No, it is all came from other countries like Thailand and Indonesia by the Dutch. So sambal. Sambal, yes. Tamil sambal da. Okay. Other big influence of our culture. Whatever you eat today is nothing belongs to us. Please understand that. This is the Dutch influence. Potatoes, 100% Dutch influence. Little bit of Portuguese and Dutch. Cauliflower and carrot. Peas masala. Yes. Vendaikai. From Brazil came through Dutch to India. But the biggest thing, this is the one. They had the huge influence on us. So, tonight when you eat, most of your things you are eating on a plate is not Indian or not even Tamilagam. Groundnut, yes. Groundnut doesn't belong to us. If you are from Kadalur, you have a different word for that. Malakata. Malakat, correct? Malata. Malata belongs to an Indonesian language. Manila? Manila Kota, yes. Yes. Yes, the word itself proves. Okay. This is a nice part of our cotton. You say sail and all. Beyond that, we had something called kalamkari, which is a block printing, very famous in Indonesia, famous in the Netherlands. The kings and queens were wearing that. And kalamkari of Pulicat, which is hand drawn, very expensive now. Very hardly few people are doing that today. And the dye comes from Palmyra tree. Other influences nearby. North we have Pulicat of Chennai. North of Chennai is Pulicat. South of Chennai is Sadaras. If you go to Kalpakkam, you can see a large collection. Till today we have large fort over there. Please go there and see it. Then we have a lot of influence of the Dutch in Pondicherry also. Many people may not know Pondicherry was for a few years ruled by the Dutch. Chennai also had influence about that. Then we have Machilipatnam, which I should not show because but Tamil Nadu, but they have a large fort over there. And Kadalur, this particular cloth, the way they weaving, it is all the Dutch influence. Then we have Porto Novo, which is called Paringipete. Then we have Tarangambadi with Dutch influence also a little bit, but maybe Danish, but we have Dutch influence because wherever Portuguese went, Dutch followed it. Wherever Dutch went, the British, Danish, Armenian, Portuguese, not Portuguese, Spanish, everybody went. That's historically. I should not say, I'm looking at Leonard so that if we object to that, let me argue. Okay. Then we have Nagapatnam with a large influence of Dutch. Large influence over the Dutch because the large symmetry also there. But the beautiful symmetry is in Pulicat only. Please come to Pulicat. Then we have something, it's my hometown. This is the church where I was baptized. This is our Cholas. This is Victor Napoleon. I don't know why Napoleon came there, but that time Napoleon was there. Please do the British Victor Napoleon. They erected one history I have to tell. Whenever there was a war between the Dutch and the Portuguese, or Dutch and the British, there was a war in Pulicat. That is a very, very matching history I can find. Whenever there was a war between the Dutch and the British in France, or not France, in Europe, there was a war here. Then if you go to Tuticorin, you will see a Dutch church still today with the VOC sign on the top of it. Neatly maintained, good thing. Then we have a lot of large influence in Sri Lanka. If you go to Gaul or any of the places, this is Bimlipatnam. If you go there, there's a huge influence of the Dutch. And this I want to show you in Malaysia. Because of our slave trade, because of the Dutch influence and the other people, we have something called Indo-Saracenic architecture. Born in Chennai, brought up in other cities also. Malaysia, Indo-Saracenic architecture, which because of the Dutch, because of the British also. In Singapore, yes. Then we have Indonesia. I went to this place. Really, I was able to match this with our own city architecture. And this I want to just show you. It was not only Dutch, the Japanese also had a large influence on Pulicat also. So in 2012, these Japanese guys, television guys like Doordarshan here from Japan television, they came and made a documentary about our work and they telecasted it on the January 1st, 2013. And in 2018, they took me to University of Tokyo to give a talk about it. So there is, and because of the gold trail, this is the gold coin exchanged for cotton. Unfortunately, I couldn't trace, please guys, if you are from museum, I couldn't trace this coin in the museum. It has been replaced with clay coin. Guys, no. Madras Museum had this coin once. There are few people sitting here from the museum, I know. Yes. Then we had a large influence from the Chettinad houses because of the Dutch and other people. If you want to talk, I can talk more also about this later. Okay, now let us come to the final thing. We got nominated from the Tamil Nadu as a World Heritage. So what now? We need to do a lot of things with our cotton. We need to do a lot of things with the nature culture linkages, with our climate. And we are looking for transnational nomination with serial nomination. Why am I talking about this? I belong to a group called ICOMOS. ICOMOS are the advisor to UNESCO for World Heritage. So we are still striving, but it's a politics, huge politics, because the government of India doesn't want any more World Heritage right. I'm putting openly here. heritage sites for Tamil Nadu because we have more sites than other states. Even Andhra doesn't have any one site for World Heritage. Okay, so we have far ahead in everything, even in Ramsar Convention as well as in World Heritage. But we are trying our best for transnational linkages so that we can do the transnational linkage with Malaysia, Singapore, and India and Sri Lanka. Okay, the final question, a question about the first slide and the final one. It's nothing but mangroves. Kavi color was podringla kavi. In those days came from mangroves. And Saivites were making that cloth. Vaishnavites were making blue color cloth. Okay, this can be a research topic if guys are interested in. We can talk about it. Okay, thank you guys. Thanks for thinking.
Sir, I'm here because my grandfather gave electricity to that island, sir. Puliket on the island.
Name தெரிஞ்சுக்கலாமா?
Sivanyanam, my தாத்தா பேர்.
Okay, சரிங்க.
So அதனால தான் நான் வந்தேன்.
Super, super.
I have one very, I don't know whether I don't know whether you will be able to answer it, but I'm asking you because
please.
You seem to relate a lot with Puliket. So, the Puliket Lakeல வந்து இந்த பக்கத்துல வந்து அதானி போர்ட்னால நிறைய சாண்ட் பேக்லாக் ஆகுது இல்லை, அதுக்கு எதுனா இனிஷியேட்டிவ் எதாவது பண்ணுறீங்களா? ஏன்னா அந்த ஃபிஷர்மென்லாம் என்கிட்ட சொல்கிறது என்னென்னா, ஒவ்வொரு தடையும் நாங்கள் போகும்போது அவங்க சொல்கிறது என்ன, அந்த மண்ணை வந்து அடைச்சிக்குது, எங்களால் போட்ஸை கூட எங்கேயும் போக முடியல.
Should I answer this question? Okay, I'm an activist for that only, but I can't answer, and this forum is non-political forum. But I just want to say something. Wherever you build a port, please understand this, all these engineers are here, the sand accumulates. Your Marina Beach is the best example for it. All over the world. It depends on the dike we build. Okay. So wherever there is a port, you will have this problem. Modern human inventions all are problem only. Because of that only climate change. Okay.
So no question. There is a prawn variety.
Yes.
I have an exporter right opposite my place. So he exports prawns actually. There is a particular variety that's only available in Puliket Lake.
Yes.
I don't know whether you're aware of
Okay.
it.
There's
the most expensive one that is sold in Japan.
In Dubai, and 1 kg is around 1,050 rupees, 1,500 rupees. And it's called tiger prawns. Puliket tiger prawns is a very, very unique species. And not only prawn, we have crab also. Both are very sought after by the Dutch, not Dutch, from the Dubai sheikhs. So none of that are sold in Chennai.
Can I ask you, between the two of you, one of you can give me the answer. The Dutch were sailing all the way up to Indonesia and also stopped in Tamil Nadu or the Coromandel coast. Did you all need the local services to repair those wooden ships? Did you all use sailing material? Do you have any documents in the universities in Amsterdam where you all used the local wood instead of having timber from Holland or anywhere in Europe to repair your ships and the sails, the masts? Did you all use the local mast materials?
Is it working? Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good question. Actually, I don't really know. I think in some cases local services, local materials were used. But as far as I know, this has not been really researched in much detail. So,
Can I add to that?
but if you know,
Yes. Okay. If you're going to Tuticorin, go to a Sailburam. You'll find a community called Vadiyar community. They are the last set of people who still make sail. Okay, with that Indian cotton. Now more we have got Indian cotton. We get Chinese cotton. So this cotton cloth are made only for the sail. And those days they had it. Okay, the mast. You used the word called mast. எத்தனை பேருக்கு அந்த do you know Ashoka tree? The false Ashoka tree. Okay, those the trees were used for mast. My grandfather used to tell that. So false Ashoka tree is not the true Ashoka tree, but those tree, because the Ashoka king was a famous, so they named it that Ashoka tree. It belonged to us, and that was the mast used for the sail. Okay, one more thing, the wood. It is not the teak wood. It was nothing but ponnai. Ponnai Maram, I don't know the English botanical name. You can see along this coast. It belongs to only Tamil Nadu. Ponnai Maram, not Punnai. Not Punnai. Punnai, nothing to do with us. Ponnai. Pon means gold. Neidal. Neidal Nilatil Vilayum Pon. Ponnai Maram, which is the most expensive tree in those days. Today, Kepar Retri Kadakide. Still in Marina Beach, you can see in PWD office. So those were the wood which used for shipbuilding, not teak anymore. Now teak was the later time, okay, because the teak belongs to the high altitude. The lower altitude or the flat land only Ponnai. What was the quality? This is too technical. But one thing I have to tell you, there is, if you go into Tukurin, if you search for a community called Odavi, in Sangam literature, Odavi means shipbuilders. They were using this particular wood. It's mentioned in Sangam literature also. When I say Sangam literature, before 5th century, not after 5th century, because after 5th century was corrupted in many ways.
There's a company called Vadyar Boats.
Yes, Vadyar Boats. Yes. More of, we can't talk about today because of political scenario today, many things can't be spoken out. Otherwise, history has to be rewritten.
Yeah, please.
I have 2 questions, one short one for you. So you said the Shivites use mangroves and use the brown color from that. What did the Vishnuites use to make blue?
Your famous indigo.
Oh, okay. All right, thanks.
Yes.
And for you, from the perspective of like a Tamil commoner, I unfortunately can't say that I feel a tangible effect in my day-to-day life from the Dutch history. Now my question is to you as a person with Dutch background, Dutch origins, do you feel a tangible change in your lifestyle or in your language or your culture from Tamil history or Tamil culture?
I'm afraid I have to say no. No, in the Netherlands too, this history that I was talking about just now, it's completely unknown. So people are aware that the Dutch were active in Indonesia, also because we stayed there until the 1940s. People have no idea that India was a very important region for the Dutch East India Company. So people don't know. As a kid, I didn't know either.
No, but today, like in your culture, when you see it, like
No.
is your language no?
Well,
Many
I don't
words.
think so. As far as I know, the only Tamil word we have in Dutch is katamaran. But no one knows
Katamaran.
it's a Tamil word. Yeah, the ship, type of ship. No.
Cash.
Okay, cash. Apparently, that's what we learned, but I didn't know that. No, it's India, Tamil Nadu. It's a very unknown area in the Netherlands.
I'm sorry for dragging this question so long.
No problem.
What you're saying is that not only does Tamil culture not have a tangible difference, but as an entirety, Indian culture hasn't affected present day Dutch traditions and culture either?
Chicken masala.
Well, actually, it's only quite okay. We have another Dutch India specialist here, so I don't know if he agrees. But when I was younger, I became interested in India. It was actually quite hard to find an Indian restaurant in the Netherlands, and now it has changed because we have so many Indian expats now. But India is basically a rather, of course, everyone has heard about India as a place that exists, but most people know very little about it. Yeah? Yeah, but
I am Tamilian, born and brought up in the Netherlands.
yeah.
And I'm also a choreographer. And there is actually proof of influence in ballet, opera, and music of the actually Andhra-based and Tamil-based dancers and musicians that traveled in Europe and had 30 performances. So there's a lot of influence, even in the music of Johann Strauss, that has been researched by my friend in Melbourne. So there's a
But
lot.
not many people are aware of it.
Aware of
That
it,
is
yes.
going to change.
So that's my example about Dutch national dress. It's considered Dutch national dress in Hinderlopen and
This
other
is
places.
why your work is so important.
Yeah, but no one knows that.
One more, can I add something is, you should be proud of this region. Let us not take the word India, because don't think that I'm anti-Indian, I'm Indian. Anything beyond Indus is India, even goes up to Japan. Okay, that was the history, most of the other things. Because of our climatic condition, because of our vegetation, this region influenced before 10th century all over the world. There are umpty number of influence. I can show you plenty. Due to many changes in the political stand by after the 10th century, due to language, due to many other things, I saw lots of things in Indonesia. I was able to associate myself, this guy is this, hey, you're talking about something which I was from, I'm from. So there are a lot of things happened after 10th century. Even today it's happening more. So if you go just look at the history through nature, your eyes will open like anything. Look at all the species, look at all the palm trees. Palm tree itself I can talk about a lot. There are different varieties of palm tree that are now vanished.
What impact, excuse me,
Just next question.
what impact did the Battle of Colachal have on Dutch trading?
It had a big impact because until that, so this is a battle that was waged in 1741 or 1743
42.
in Kerala. Until that battle, the Dutch were quite powerful in Kerala. As I said, they were politically, economically dominant. Then they lost that battle because Travancore had risen, and under Martin da Varma they defeated the Dutch. It was a big blow, in Kerala at least, because it meant the end of the political dominance. Whether it had an impact on the Dutch in general in India, I don't think anyone has really researched that. That would be hard to say. But in Kerala it was a major change.
Second question, in what language did they converse when they came in here first?
You mean the Dutch and the local people? That was mostly in Portuguese.
Portuguese.
Yeah, so Portuguese was the lingua franca, the language that both parties could understand.
2 centuries, for 2 centuries.
Yeah, but I must add that there were also a fair number of Dutchmen who learned the local languages. For instance, who grew up here, because there were actually recently my wife and I we visited several cemeteries, Dutch cemeteries, and you see that some of these Dutchmen are actually born here. And we also have some documents that say that sometimes they could speak Tamil or Telugu or Kannada or yeah. Yeah.
I do have 2 small questions, which will make up for 1 question, well within my limit, I believe. So, firstly, Mr. Xavier, you were saying that you're not a typical academician, but the whole presentation, it was like giving academic vibes only. And
Thank
so
you.
proud of what you're doing as a Tamarian especially. The first question being, so what would be the authentic vegetable that used to...
Authentic?
Authentic vegetable. So
Vegetable.
you're saying that whatever we eat now is all influence of other countries?
Ma pala valai.
Mango,
That's authentic.
banana,
Mango, banana, jackfruit. It's very authentic of Tamil.
what about vegetables?
If you've been to any Tamil marriage, the first 3 things they will give is ma pala valai. In vegetables, we have very few today. Sundakai, these are all things. The powder, that's all millets. Then tinai mavu. Thenum tinai mavu சொல்றதுல it is our things. Unfortunately, many records, we have to go more into other records to see which are the authentic one. But Sundaika is our thing, that definitely.
Okay, and my next question being, towards the end you were saying that our government particularly, they're not interested in receiving more tags of heritage or UNESCO, but wouldn't that be a thing of pride and they would want more of it instead of less of it? Like, if you can comment
because
on that.
what problem, we should understand the government side also. India is a large country and most of the regions not even have a national heritage. Okay, so the heritage which were very popular in that state is not even been listed in the ASI documents. So we need to first bring that. And Tamil Nadu has always been forehead in these things. We make sure that we have all the world heritage. We make sure that we are all there in the, I don't know, thanks to all the IAS officers were there in 1950s and 60s and 80s. So they did this good job. But remaining states, there are many states, Gujarat I would say, now making themselves popular. But history-wise, nature-wise, culture-wise, we were very strong. Very, very strong. Mughals were trying plenty of time to attack us or conquer us. There are many examples for it. They couldn't directly come here. There are land route called Silk Route. That's something called Spice Route, but I would name it as a Cotton Route. Both the sites were coming to know what these guys were doing with a lot of things. We were doing music, we were doing architecture, we were doing cloth, sail, everything, boat building. This, and one thing, you should not think that only India, particularly this part was the popular. There were popular locations in South America and other places also. So history-wise, God has created every tropical country, God's own country only. But we should not exaggerate our history, only Tamilnadu has got, or India has got God now today. But Tamilnadu had a big impact on the Roman Empire, on the Europe. So they were coming beginning of the, even say, the 2nd BC. Yes.
Okay, I have a question for Leonard. Leonard, you explained about the records of the Dutch East India Company. There are like 5 kilometers in total. And you said there's a lot of information about India. So do researchers always have to travel to the Netherlands to see these records, or can they do research in another way? And do these archives only contain information in Dutch or also in other languages?
Yeah, so let me tell you a bit about these Dutch East India Company records. They're scattered over several places in the world. In the Netherlands, there's a big collection in the Tamil Nadu archives here in Chennai. There's a lot of material in Colombo, Jakarta. I would say 99.99% of it is in Dutch. You would find the occasional Tamil document or Malayalam document, but it's very little. So basically, if you want to work with these materials, you have to learn Dutch. Parts have been scanned and be put online. So everything in the Netherlands is online. Half of the material in Chennai is online. So quite a bit is online. Then you ask about the language, right? Do you have to? So you don't always have to travel. It depends on what you want to see. Do you have to learn a language? Was that a question that you asked? No.
Translation.
Okay, so there are all these developments. There is now a tool that can actually read the old handwriting and change it into
English.
No, not English, but modern digital script.
Okay.
It's still old Dutch. It's not modern Dutch. But I heard that there is now also a tool who can sort of change it into modern Dutch.
Oh. Yeah.
And then we have Google Translate.
Yes.
So then that's the last step where you actually have English. What I wouldn't advise to any scholar is, okay, I don't know Old Dutch, I don't know Dutch at all, I just enter a word, let's say, pulikat. You will have, I don't know, 20,000 hits.
Yes.
You have no idea what to do with it, you know? So we are actually very actively encouraging historians from outside the Netherlands, including India, to use these Dutch materials because they put another perspective on the history of, for instance, Tamil Nadu.
Yes.
But you need lots of skills, not only linguistic. You have to understand how the archives work. You have to understand what the Dutch thought, why they recorded some things, why they didn't record other things, how the archives are organized, what is the value of the information, is it actually reliable? Of course, the information is very biased, very orientalistic, right? They say the most horrible things about the Indians. I'm sorry to say that, because that was
horrible things.
Horrible things, very racist things.
Yes.
Sometimes they can be also full of praise, I should add. So I don't know if this answers your question, but these archives are very valuable for Indian history. And there have been actually quite a number of historians, also from Tamil Nadu, who learned Old Dutch and then traveled to the Netherlands so that they can actually use these sources and write history of Tamil Nadu. But I'm a bit skeptical about all the new tools. I think only those tools is not enough. Does that answer your question? Yeah, this was my wife who always asks difficult questions when I have a presentation. It's not the first time.
Not so much of a question, but a comment. See, I've been reading, currently I'm reading a book by William Dalrymple, the latest book called The Golden Road. And it beautifully describes what exactly you said, about the northeast monsoon and the, southwest monsoon, how Indians became maritime power, but just by using the monsoons, to trade cotton and then import gold, and how actually the we did so much of trade even with the Romans in Tamil Nadu actually, and it so beautifully he describes. Actually, you should have written the book maybe, but William Dalrymple has read the book, and anybody who's really interested to know what Xavier said about how Indians traded by using the monsoons, I think you should read this book called The Golden Road by William Dalrymple. It's an excellent book. I'm currently reading it, and it beautifully describes exactly what both of you said.
I just want to add a point to it. Can I add that point to what is like? Don't mistake again, I'm a good Indian. Before 2014, there was a very active movement to get a World Heritage status for something called MOSAM, project by Dr. Manmohan Singh. It was pushed a lot. Many people fought for it. And that is the book which he copied and just published it. Okay. Because many people are popular, so they know how to access it and they publish it. But there are many number of people who are, without talking anything, they're doing activist things. Those guys, they did a lot of activity for this monsoon because they know Tamilagam had the big history about gold trade. Today, T Nagar is full of gold because of those days. We were exchanging gold for cotton. There are documents, thousands of documents, just showing the exchange rate between the gold and cotton. How many grams for this much of cotton? Okay, that's how the powerful it was. After 2014, everything changed. Even the project has been scrapped out. Okay, so this had made into book now. Thank you for that. Thanks for him. So this is what I want to comment. Thank you. I have a couple of books about the Pulicat, only Pulicat. I live, die for Pulicat.
Hi, sirs. First of all, amazing lecture, actually. So I just want to understand, we have all this cotton that's being traded away from India, right, and from Tamil Nadu itself. So in 1815 also, I'm really glad that you brought up the monument that was shown. In 1815, the Congress of Vienna was signed as an international law, which basically stated the return of goods and handicrafts during the Napoleonic Wars. And in 1799, India was unfortunately in a war with Napoleon, and a lot of specifically...
Not India, one part of India.
One part of India, I'm sorry. So one part of India was during this war, and specifically in this case, a lot of cotton articrafts and handicrafts were taken away from India. So I just want to understand, what's the future for these handicrafts? Will they ever return to India? Because it goes without saying that these owe a lot of culture and heritage to our world and to our country itself.
I would say, let me be bold here. This is a word from the National Museum person. Let us not bring back anything from other country. Let it be there itself safe. Because thousands of, okay, let me put the story. Can I take a few minutes? Last year, the government of India gave us one studio within Red Fort. Within Red Fort, part of Atmanirbhar Center for Design, they gave us one studio to design palm leaf handicraft from Tamil Nadu. Only studio was given to us with the IIT Bombay. I was a bit surprised. Red Fort was going to convert it into a national museum. Okay, so that's the politics, but now it has been stopped. I'm putting it bluntly here. But artifacts which are bought from other countries due to this treaty are lying in open ground, in open area. Many people don't know which is authentic, which is replaced. There are coins. One coin which I say is Japanese coins, where gold coins have been replaced with clay coins now. So there are thousands. So let us not bring back Kohinoor. Let us not bring back anything. Let it be there where it is. Once we are safe and secure with our security systems and honest politicians, things will come back.
I will
Sorry.
I will not say anything about this.
Question to Mr. Bess, right here.
Bess.
Looking at how Sri Lanka is today, and the kind of tangible influence that the Dutch rule had on Sri Lanka, be it their cuisine, be it their culture. There even exists a large community of burghers who still retain Dutch surnames, from the time the Dutch were there. How is it that just a few hundred kilometers north, there's barely any tangible influence of the Dutch in our daily lives, whereas it's completely different in Sri Lanka. What were the factors that led to Sri Lanka retaining more of the influence of the Dutch compared to, say, Tamil Nadu and southern Andhra?
Well, that is, of course, because the Dutch were much more powerful in Sri Lanka. They actually controlled the coast, especially after 1765, when they had the big war with the Kandy Kingdom. They controlled a large part of Sri Lanka. So they really governed part of the country. So obviously there was much more influence. And then why could they do that? Basically, it is much easier to control an island where you don't have such a strong power. If you compare that to Tamil Nadu, that was much harder. Because, for instance, these Nayaka kingdoms, and later, for instance, the Nawabs of Arcot, and name all these rulers, they were quite powerful. So the Dutch always, they always search for a balance. I mean, if they really wish, they could try to conquer certain areas, but to wage war is very expensive. Is it worth the money? Because the Dutch were always thinking about money, right? They just want to make a profit or not. So they were always thinking, okay, we can invest in a war here, but maybe we should just stick to trade, and that will be the most profitable thing in the end. So that was the decision that they made here in Tamil Nadu. Like, let's remain traders. In the end, we will gain most from that. And in Sri Lanka, there was another balance. I think that's the answer. So everywhere they were in Asia, they would consider the local situation. And of course, there were also places where they could invest all the money they wanted, and they still would not be able to control it. So, for instance, in North India, you had the Mughal Empire. Of course, the Dutch were no match to the Mughals, right? So they just had to ask, "Can we trade here, please?" And then the Mughal emperor would say, "Well, okay, if you give me nice gifts, I'll let you trade." Yeah, but that's basically really how it went. And then in the south, it was slightly different. That's why I said both parties were, you could say, fairly equal to each other. And then in Sri Lanka, it's again another situation. Does that sort of answer your... Yeah.
Thing I would add, that's where the only people didn't convert anybody.
Yeah, because they only thought about money.
Yes, they were only came for trades. Every other people, whether it is Hindu kings or Shaivite kings or Vaishnavites or a Lutheran or a Catholic or a Islam, they all wanted one identity with their business people, their own religion.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with the conversion in terms of God, only for the business. God for business.
There were some exceptions. So, for instance,
very few.
Yeah, in the north of Sri Lanka, the Dutch did try. Well, you have to make a distinction. So there's the Dutch East India Company.
Yes.
They only care about profit. But in the wake of the company, there were Dutch missionaries.
Missionaries.
Actually, the Dutch East India Company didn't really like those missionaries anyway.
Because of they don't want the local women get married to the white man.
Yeah, and they create problems, right? But okay, in some cases it was sort of allowed.
Yes,
so
yes.
Taiwan, Sri Lanka, there were a few places where Dutch missionaries actually did try to convert people. It was never
in India.
Success.
No, yes, when success. Yes.
No.
Yes, thank you.
So thank you very much. I think this conversation can go on, but it's opened up new avenues of interest, because what we have been exposed to is only the British history or the French history, because Pondicherry is nearby. We're very thankful that you have opened up a new avenue for us, and we are sure to invite more scholars to come and talk to us on these heritages. So with that, I think our speakers deserve a standing ovation.
Wow.
Thank you for coming and giving us such an interesting session. Our next session, by the way, is on the 10th. So we invite all of you to come, and here we have two very eminent ambassadors coming to speak to us. Ambassador Ruchi Ghanshyam and Ambassador Ghanshyam. And she was the ambassador in Pakistan, and she talks about a woman in diplomatic circles in Pakistan, and I think that will be an interesting topic too. So thank you for turning up in large numbers. We have a full house today, and we hope that the same continues in our coming events too. So till we meet again, thank you. Good night.
Thank you.